Haikyuu is an anime that is filled with beautiful themes. Haruichi Furudate showcases these themes not only in the form of volleyball matches, but also certain plays, techniques, and of course, beliefs. A great example is the theme of winners and losers. The idea that aside from you, there's so many people out there that put in just as much effort into what they love doing. Yet, at the end of the day, there will always be one winner and one loser. Another example is the theme of becoming one with your team, whether it be in skill or spirit. And so today, I want to talk about one of my favorite themes in Haikyuu, a theme that is one of the foundations of this story, seen from the very beginning of the show, a theme that doesn't just apply to one character. Rather, it applies to the entire spirit of volleyball itself. A theme that created iconic moments that we will never forget, while also teaching us a beautiful lesson. Of course, I'm talking about the power of trust. This theme of trust has been a cornerstone of Haikyuu, which makes sense because it's about a team sport. In a sport such as volleyball, you need to trust your teammates, and our main characters, the Karasuno High School volleyball team, portray this beautifully. Hell, I think Karasuno is the team that best personifies this theme. From the very beginning in episode 1, we see what a lack of trust does to a player like Kageyama. A selfish king who demands rather than relies, and that is what Kageyama has to come to terms with for most of his arc, particularly when compared to Oikawa. On the other hand, we have Hinata, who is willing to completely put his trust in his genius setter, as well as his teammates. After all, he's someone that's never had a proper setter before, let alone a proper team, and so he's willing to do whatever it takes to be a part of this experience, to stay on the court as long as possible. And this blind trust is embodied perfectly as Kageyama and Hinata come together to create their iconic weapon, the Freak Quick. A move in which Hinata completely puts his trust in Kageyama, to the point where, during Season 1, he keeps his eyes closed when spiking that particular set. The whole point of the Freak Quick is that it's not possible under normal circumstances, not only because the set itself is ridiculously hard to pull off, but because no one has this much faith or trust in a single person. Haikyuu shows us time and time again how important trust really is in volleyball. There's so many different instances where trust plays a pivotal role. Now, I want to talk about one of my favorite scenes in Haikyuu, a scene that masterfully conveys this message of trust through not only a hype play, but also fantastic character development. Of course, it occurs during Karasuno's intense game with Inarizaki, and it involves two completely opposite players, Hinata and Tsukishima. I love Hinata and Tsuki's dichotomy and how it develops throughout the series. The first obvious thing about their dynamic is their names, Tsukishima being named after the moon and Hinata after the sun. These names aren't just there to show that they're opposites, but also their natures. Tsuki being the calm strategist and Hinata being the ball of fiery passion. For the longest time, Tsukishima and Hinata weren't the best of friends. They both played the same positions, and I think Hinata respected him, but Tsuki didn't like the guy. He felt irritated by Hinata's intense showcase of passion, especially because Tsuki didn't really wear his emotions on his sleeve. Oftentimes, when he himself acted passionately, Tsuki would reprimand himself by saying, "What are you, Hinata, getting all excited like that?" Other times, the way Tsuki acted made it feel as if he was kind of jealous of Hinata, jealous of his optimistic and hardworking nature, jealous of his endless passion for volleyball. At the back of his mind, Tsukishima thought himself to be inferior to Hinata, even if he didn't show that on the surface. For a long time, he simply accepted the fact that he would never be like Hinata, and was therefore not as good as him. It was an interesting dynamic that they had, and it created a lot of conflicting and sometimes funny moments. Now, at the beginning of Season 4, after his amazing performance against Shiratorizawa, Suki had become one with his team. Not only that, he's kind of passionate about the game now, and honestly is one of the biggest contributors to Karasuno's success. As a result of this, it seems that for the rest of the season, he doesn't really have an arc. However, although I didn't notice this on my first watch, there is a kind of mini arc that Suki goes through this season. An arc that is kind of subtle, but embodies this theme of trust really well. It all begins when Hinata sneaks into the training camp Suki was selected for. Here, Hinata, no matter how passionate, is simply not allowed to participate. He's made into a ball boy and gets no practice. Yet, he doesn't give up, and making perfect use of this opportunity, focuses on watching the other players. He observes and comes to appreciate as well as learn the fundamentals he had never been taught before. Alongside sweeping the floors, filling up water bottles, and drying jerseys, Hinata is also practicing, even during the nights after the sessions are over. He isn't even allowed to eat with the rest of the team, while also living really far away from the training camp. But he still keeps coming, day in and day out. Yet, Hinata isn't the only one doing the observing. After all, Tsukishima was the only Karasuno player that witnessed all of this. He sees this super energetic kid as seemingly denied an opportunity Suki got, even though he thought himself inferior to Hinata. Yet, Hinata somehow turns that into an advantage that teaches him lessons he would have never learned if he wasn't a ball boy. Suki sees this kid do all of his duties, as well as practice on his own. Most notably, Tsukishima sees Hinata practice his defense, his receiving. From completely relying on his instincts to carefully watching the ball and making educated predictions, Hinata puts in a lot of work in order to get this skill down. Yet, even though he's getting the hang of it, Hinata has not really mastered it, even after the training camp. However, the fact remains, he is a completely different player at this point. And more than anyone in Karasuno, Tsukishima is the one who truly knows what Hinata has been through. Others might have heard tales of it, but Suki experienced it, and that's a whole different level of understanding. There's this weird bond between the two of them that isn't really noticeable on the surface. If you look closer though, the way they interact with each other after this arc is much more friendly, and now, instead of being jealous or irritated by Hinata, Suki is kind of competing with him as a rival. Instead of thinking himself lesser than Hinata as he used to, the calm strategist now slowly comes to see the ball of fiery passion as an equal. Before, Suki always thought that Hinata was the kind of guy that would go charging headfirst into any situation without thinking first. And yes, that was true with him sneaking into the training camp, but the way he approaches this training, meticulously watching, observing, and learning, is something that Suki did not expect from the little guy. Realizing that Hinata is actually willing to do whatever it takes to stay on the court, even if that means not practicing his offense, his favorite part of the game, was something that opened Suki's eyes. It made him respect Hinata. And so, we cut to the game at hand, Karasuno and Inarizaki going head to head in their last set. At this point, all the players are really tired, particularly Tsukishima. He's annoyed at constantly running and jumping, at Miya Atsumu for being hard to read, and at Rintaro Suna, whose attacks almost always seem to get past Tsuki. Suna's unique technique that gets around the block is really frustrating for a blocker like Tsukishima. At this point, Nishinoya, their best receiver, is off the court, and both teams are in a deuce situation, sitting at 27 points each, so Tsuki really can't afford to let Suna's attacks go past him. Before, with Nishinoya present, Tsukishima could do what he did against Shiratorizawa, what Karasuno called total defense, where the blockers would narrow the attacker's course by funneling the ball towards their super libero. It was an indirect form of blocking, not as flashy and not as hype, but really efficient and something that always benefited Karasuno. More importantly, it was a play that perfectly demonstrated the theme of trust. To purposefully not block an attacker because you trust that your libero or receiver will pick up the ball for you. To be honest though, Nishinoya was hella dependable, so it was actually not that hard for Karasuno to be able to trust him. However, there was no Nishinoya to do that right now. As the ball enters the Inarizaki court, Miya Atsumu sets the ball up, and it seems that he's giving it to Suna. Of course, Tsuki reads this and jumps for it. Here, we get a look into his mind as everything slows down. He says that it would be pretty hype if he could block Suna's attack completely right now, just like how he did back with Ushiwaka when he completely denied him. But with that technique of his, it just wasn't possible. There was only one option that Tsuki had, to narrow the course. But who could he trust with that funnel in this dire situation? Who could he trust without batting an eye, without worrying if that person had what it took to read this attack, read Tsuki's intentions, and then act upon them? Well, it turns out the answer was pretty simple for Tsukishima. To him, there could only be one man for the job. Tsukishima, being the lone wolf of the team, finally trusting someone was just fantastic. Not to mention, the one he trusted this much was the guy that irritated him the most for a long time. I think Tsukishima gained a new level of respect for Hinata after that training camp, and realized that if he could trust anyone on the team, it was this passionate and hardworking guy that was willing to do whatever it takes to stay on the court. Tsuki's trust in Hinata is a great example of this theme, and I can never get enough of that scene. Watching the guy who never got along with anyone put his faith in someone like that was just amazing growth, and a character arc that I think is really underrated. After all, with the two opposites coming together and executing a masterful play, it demonstrated perfectly the power of trust. Thank you for watching this video. This is a new series that I'm planning on doing, The Power of Trust. I don't know how many videos I'll do in it, but it's something that I see very often in Haikyuu, and there's a lot of different circumstances and situations that I can talk about. So if you want to see me do more videos on this topic, consider liking, subscribing, and all that good stuff. Other than that, I guess I'll see you on the next one.